So all over social media and all over TikTok and Instagram, I always preach self-learning before class early to succeed in VCE methods and just VCE in general. But what a lot of people don't know is that this actually takes a lot of motivation. I say it as if it's an easy thing, and I recognize that I do, and I reflect when I watch a video and I realize I make it sound so simple. It's actually not as simple as I say. The actual process is simple, but actually having the motivation to do it before class is very difficult to kind of just manufacture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about how I kind of turned my high school life around, and there was a certain turning point, or there was a certain key events that happened to allow me to realize that I needed to improve before it was too late. So just a quick backstory. During, I guess, primary school, I was always in the accelerated class, so I definitely had underlying ability somewhere when it came to schooling stuff. And I can recognize that. And I know not everyone is in that same position. I am a big believer in people can outwork natural ability, and I was actually getting along that path where people were outworking me even though I had natural ability. But it is something that you can easily outwork if you don't have it, or if you feel like you don't have it. And if you feel like you don't have it, you probably will. You probably do, but you just don't realize it. But that's a story for another video. But during primary school, I realized that I had natural ability, and in hindsight, I definitely did. I was in the accelerated classes for primary school, and then I moved to a completely different high school. And I guess you could say I was put into the cool group, which I wasn't really in primary school. You probably know what I'm talking about, but as a result of that, I didn't really do much classwork or anything like that. And my scores reflected that, because I always found school easy. In primary school, it's also not that important, but in high school, it's much more independent. And primary school is not really tested, high school is definitely tested. And I was getting really poor scores. And it got to a point where I received 19%. I remember this very vividly. I received 19% for a lab report for Year 8 science. And man, my parent-teacher interviews were insanely bad. I mean, you probably have parent-teacher interviews as well, and your parents might have, gave you the eyes and really gave you a mouthful when you got back home. And I had a few of them. And that kind of put something in me, like I planted some seeds, and I did work for a short amount of time, but it eventually wore away, because the peer pressure from your friends to always go out, to kind of not care about school because that's kind of what's cool to do, that outweighs the parents' influence of trying to get you to do work. And you might have been in the same boat where you have those short stints of motivation because of those external factors, but there has to be something internal that actually changes. External factors don't push someone permanently. They push someone temporarily, but something needs to change internally. Like there has to be an internal shift for people to actually adapt and change. So I had those short stints of motivation, but I never had that long-term motivation. And I got moved out of that friendship group because all of our classes rearranged from Year 9 onwards, and I started to kind of pick up my scores a bit, but it was nothing too crazy to kind of scream home about. Now, what changed was when I was in Year 10, because I enrolled for the early math methods class. So I started 1-2 methods in Year 10, and somehow I got in. You had to have a certain score requirement. I didn't fulfill those requirements, but I applied anyway. I ended up getting it. I'm not sure why, but I'll take it, right? It was a cool thing to do, and I didn't realize how much it would benefit me in the long term. I just did it because I didn't really like anything else. I always liked maths, kind of, and there's nothing else that really interested me. The only other options were really accounting or biology, but I didn't want to do either of them. They don't sound too interesting to me. But I did VC 1-2 methods in Year 10, and I started doing it, and everyone in the class was insanely intelligent, especially compared to me. And I felt like a really big imposter in that class because everyone understood everything so quickly. The teacher would teach things very fast, and it would just drive me nuts how fast everyone was learning everything, and everything was just going completely over my head every single session. And the real turning point, or maybe not the maybe it's not just this, it's an accumulation of events, but the thing that I remember was we did our first tests for 1-2 methods, and the teacher was giving back the test scores once she marked it, and after she gave back a couple, everyone kind of realized that the scores were handed back in descending order, because the 2 notoriously smartest people from the year level got it back first, and it wasn't in alphabetical order. So everyone just knew that the test was given back in score order. And I got it back pretty much last in the class, and it was really, really embarrassing. And what made it even more embarrassing was she read out the names and then people had to walk up, so everyone knew that I was in that last range. I'm not sure, I don't remember if I was last actually, I think I might have been close to that, but anyway, it was late enough that it made me really embarrassed. And I think it hit me that everyone in that class was really smart, but at the same time, I had just so much work to do to kind of be in that level. But I felt that because I was in that class, I could fulfill that potential. And I knew I had the potential deep down, but I just never unlocked it during high school. I was always slacking, I didn't really care about school, I was just not interested in anything. But that caused me to change. And that was the real turning point. Okay, I'm gonna kind of pull up my socks, I'm gonna just try for 1-2 methods. I actually didn't really put much effort into any other subject. I'm just gonna try for this subject. And I started getting ahead of the class because I wanted to learn things in advance and kind of get ahead to kind of make up for the gap in knowledge that I had. Because I wasn't able to keep up with class. So I had to learn it in advance to kind of compensate. And that actually allowed me to not only catch up to them, to the rest of the class, but it also allowed me to learn faster and more in depth. And that's why I preach self-learning, because it doesn't only make up for your gap in knowledge, it also helps you exceed it. Now, in a couple of tests time, I kind of refined this methodology. I'm learning in advance. I have really thorough theory skills, I guess. And in 2 test time, I end up getting the test back second out of the class. Very quick turnaround. And I wasn't only super proud of myself, but there was this aura in the room that everyone was surprised that I got it back early in the list, because people were surprised. And it was a good feeling because, I'm walking around class, I got the test back second, I'm, big man on campus. And it was such a, I don't know, that was a good feeling at the time. And I was pretty prideful, but it was a good feeling at the time. But that was the real turning point, because I realized my potential in a very short period of time. And from then on, it was only upwards in terms of my schooling, because that gave me momentum and it gave me the confidence to do the same thing with other subjects. And even if I didn't enjoy those subjects, I would still implement the same ideology and the same process, and it would work out for those subjects. For example, I didn't really like chemistry, but I implemented the process and I ended up getting an okay score. I didn't like English at all. I didn't even read the novels during year 12, but I still implemented those self-strategy or self-study steps, and that allowed me to achieve good scores in English, or good enough. But just that one period of time for that one subject that I enjoyed, that I knew I had potential in, but I didn't fulfill it. As soon as I fulfilled it, it was a positive snowball effect. And it was a positive loop after that, because it gave me confidence to do it for the other things. And then I implemented it for the other subjects, and I ended up doing much better than I would have initially thought. So that was the turning point for me. And I had pieces in place, but they weren't put together. I didn't have the glue. I had all the individual pieces. I had underlying motivation for university. I had pressure from my parents to succeed. I had underlying desire to succeed. I had some sort of skill underneath me, underneath all the coolness from high school. But what I'm saying in this video, or what I'm trying to illustrate, is that you have these pieces as well. You just don't realize it, and you might not have thought about it deeply. So first of all, what do you want to achieve from high school? Do you have a long-term goal? Do you have a university course that you want to get into? If so, what's the score and how much work do you need to get there? And that should be your underlying motivation, or that should be the cornerstone of your motivation. Because most people at this point in their VC life, they know where they're going to, they know what their dream university course is, whether it be med, law, commerce, business, engineering, whatever else. Nursing, I'm not sure what I'm not sure what are the possible courses. I'm trying to think. Sorry, the light just turned on next to me. But what you need to do is realize your potential and unlock it. And it actually just takes an initial leap of faith, because it's hard to just expect things to change without you changing what you do. It's like expecting you have some sort of process, right? You have some sort of machine and you get an output from an input. You're trying to achieve different outputs without changing the input. You need to blindly change the input, see what works for you, and what I'm saying to do is what will work for you because it works for everyone. And then you will realize a different output. It's as simple as that. So if you just blindly implement what I say, then you are guaranteed to increase the level of knowledge that you have. It's guaranteed. Unless you don't do it properly, which that's not my fault. But if you do what I tell you to do, and you do it properly, and you do it thoroughly, then it will work for you. But again, it's about having that level of blind faith. You have to trust what people say. So you have to trust what I say. And I know that's actually a hard thing. I'm saying it like it's an easy thing. But you should try to interpret it as an easy thing, but I know it's not. I'm a really bad person, and I've always been a really bad person at taking others' advice, up until recently when I realized I actually had a problem with taking people's advice. And up until that point, I found it really difficult to take people's advice. So I understand if you're kind of hesitant, but just what changed for me was I just blindly did it one time. And that literally changed everything. I was open-minded. I had a sponge-like mentality. And I learned this in the church. They teach having a childlike mentality when it comes to learning things. Pretend you're a child. You would listen to everything when you're a child, because everything is just knowledge that you're gaining. And you're getting knowledge from here, knowledge from there. So have a childlike mentality when it comes to learning things, and trust me, it'll make your life in VC a lot better.